two different types of wheels. We have Shimpo wheels, and then this one right here is a Brent wheel. The Shimpo wheels are a little different looking than these Brent wheels. I have a few different supplies out. So right here I have a plaster bat, and I usually keep the plaster bat, I use it for putting clay that gets all over my hands over on here, chunks of clay. I also should have a sponge and a water container. Never ever ever store any of your tools in the water container. Some of them can be quite sharp, so do not store them in the water container. Put them next to your splash bin on the tray, or you can put it, if there's a chair, you can put it on the chair. I also have a needle tool, I have a J tool, and I also have a plastic rib. Notice how clean they all are? They should be that clean when you put them away as well. On my wheel, I have a wheel head that is metal, and then I have the splash bin. This is a wheel bat. That's a plaster bat, this is a wheel bat. The wheel bat has little holes you line up with the screws on the wheel head, and it will spin with it. Now on the side, there's a little switch here. When I turn on the switch, the light will turn on, it'll turn it on. The Shimpos have like a light switch that's near the base that you flip up and it turns on the machine, and then you can choose to go forward or reverse. There's a separate switch for that. Notice how clean my wheel is. Every day before you leave, you have to clean it to be this clean. All right, it needs to be nice and sparkly. Now, down at my foot, I have a pedal, and the pedal is in a nice, comfortable position for my foot. You'll also notice that I'm right up against the wheel here. That's very important. I need to get good leverage, and I can use my whole body to get leverage if I'm sitting in the right spot. I'm going to turn a little bit so the camera can see it better. Now, if I step on the pedal, and it's plugged in all the way, there we go. It wasn't turned on. I guess it was on already. It was supposed to be off. There we go. If I step on the pedal and take my foot off of the pedal, you'll notice that it's not like a car, it'll keep spinning. Now I can adjust the speed to whatever I want for whatever I'm doing, right? But I usually want to set it at a speed and work at that speed, speed it up if I need it to go faster, all right? When I start on my clean bat here, I want to have some clay ready to go. If it's shaped sort of coned like this, it's kind of helpful, but you want it to be round for the most part. You're going to aim for the center. You're going to pick it up and kind of hit it down on there. Sometimes I hit it twice, and that really helps to stick it down. And then I can start it spinning. Dry hands, I'm going to push down the base, and what that will do is it'll suction it down. This little bit of clay that I just pulled off is now going to go on top of my plaster here. Now, at this stage, I can dip my hand into the water and I can start adding water to it. You'll notice that it starts to look shiny. Before it was kind of dull. Now that it's shiny, it has slip on it, and it will want to slide through my fingers, right? It will become slippery. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center this piece. So I'm going to continue to do what's called coning the piece so that it makes a nice cone, and then I'm going to push down on it to flatten out the piece into like a gumdrop shape. So with some water on it, you want lots of water, right? You want it to spin fast, so you're going to make sure your wheel's spinning quickly, and then you're going to use your elbows to kind of anchor your arms. So if I'm right up against the wheel, I'm going to put my elbows so that my right elbow is out of my right knee, and then my left hand is pushing using this nice little palm, part of my palm against the clay. push it down. So my left arm isn't going to do anything. It's just going to hold the clay, right? It's going to hold the clay still. My right arm is going to move so that my elbow comes into my rib cage. And I'm going to push, once again with this part of my hand, I'm going to push, see how there's like a cylinder here? I'm going to push against that little corner, down. Some people like to use the side of their hand and push down like this. Now, notice how it's not as shiny anymore. It needs more water. I'm going to keep this right hand so that it cradles the clay, keep it still, and then my right hand, the palm of my hand, I'm going to push down like this until I've got a nice piece of clay. Now, I like to pull up the little bit that's along the bottom. I'm going to do it again. So, left hand, anchor it on that leg. Make sure you keep it nice and still. If your left hand is moving around, your clay is going to be moving around. Sometimes you can kind of hold your hand there if you maybe have little pea shooter arms. Your right hand is going to push. Got a little bit of volcano there. Is going to push towards your left hand, not towards your body. Don't pull. Push into your hand. Then you can do a fist like this. You could use your palm right here on your palm, and you're gonna move that right elbow into your rib cage. You're gonna push down. I'm really pushing with this part of my palm when I'm pushing down using my fist. You can see that I've got a gumdrop shape. You can also see that my hands are not wiggling when I touch it. They stay nice and still. Now I can open this up. When I open this up, I am going to do two things. One thing I can do is a little eagle. I can hold my hands nice and still and steady, and I can go aim for the middle, right? Another thing people do is they will use finger guns. I like the finger guns. The finger guns, you just do a little gun like that. You put your other hand, I even like to grab the sponge sometimes. Put your other hand in that little crook here. Hold everything nice and still and aim for the middle. All right? Now, if you try to push down without adding water, your hands are going to go all over the place. So what I like to do is take the sponge, put it in the little crook here, and continually add water. If you're doing the eagles, you can just spritz some water in there and add it as you need it, right? So I can just keep adding water. Oh, I'm out of water. Add more water. Or I can do this, where I have my finger gun, put the sponge there, put my hand there, and it'll add water as I go. Now you don't want to go too deep. If you go too deep, you might end up with a donut. That's not what we want. We're going to make a cylinder. So once you have what looks to be a cone on the inside, you're going to stop your wheel. And then you're going to pick up your pin tool. If you poke down and hold it there, take your other finger and grab it down at the base of the clay. That's how much clay we have down at the bottom, that distance. That's less than an inch. That's closer to 3/4 of an inch. That's perfect. I want to keep 3/4 of an inch because later, if I want to trim this, I want to make sure I have plenty of clay left over. So you don't have to worry about the hole down there. It'll compress later. So now I need to open this up. Now I want it to be at the bottom. I want it to be around the width of my sponge here. I'm going to put a little bit of water in there because I cleaned it out before. I'm going to take my left hand and spin it quickly again. Take my left hand. I'm going to use my middle finger and I'm going to it's about the width of my sponge now. I can make it a little bit wider if I want. It really depends on what you're trying to make, how wide you want it to be. But today we're going to make it around a cylinder that's around the width of the sponge here. I'm going to slow it down and I'm going to compress the bottom of my cylinder here. And you can see, so I get all the water out, how it should be, it should have a wall that goes straight up on the sides, and then it should be flat at the bottom. All right? Once you have this, this is ready to turn into a cylinder. Okay? Right now it sort of has the sloped sides. That's great because we're going to move all of that clay up and we're going to make it grow. So I need to make sure that my clay, that now that I'm ready to pull a wall, I need to make sure that my clay is spinning slower than the way we started. Because remember, it was fast before. You want it to go fast while you're centering. You want it to go fast even when you're opening. And it can even be going fast when you're compressing the bottom, which is pushing the bottom of the piece with your sponge. But now we want to make this grow. So we want it to go slower. If we spin it too quickly, what's going to happen is the taller it gets, the more it's going to want to flop down because of centrifugal force. Gravity is going to have more of an effect on it. You won't be able to get a nice looking shape. So we're doing a cylinder. I have my sponge in my right hand, and then in my left hand is going to be on the inside. What I'm going to do is my inside hand is going to follow my outside hand as I pull up. The inside hand is just going to support my outside hand while my outside hand is doing all the heavy lifting. All right, because look at all this clay that we have here. Now, you don't want it to stick to your hand on the inside, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to dribble a little water down my hand, and it's going to go down the side of the piece and make it nice and wet in here. Then, my sponge, which doesn't need to be super wet, I'm going to push down at the base. You might notice that I kind of use my other hand to stabilize everything and keep everything together. So I just started by pushing down at the base, and when I take my hands off, you'll see that it now slopes in, right? And now I'm going to pull. So when I'm pulling, my hands need to be nice and still and strong. If your hands are out, if you extend your hands outward, you have no strength. If you pull your arms into your body and kind of T-Rex your arms, then you're going to have a lot of strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be right over my clay. I'm going to have my inside hand, my left hand, the inside hand, supporting my right hand on the outside. I'm going to use kind of my middle finger pressed into the sponge, and I'm going to pull up that little wall, that little clump that I made on the outside. Both hands are going to be moving up together. All right? Doesn't look like too much happened yet. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to push in at the bottom. That little shelf that I have here, I'm going to pull upward using my whole body to lift. As I get closer to the top, I want to release some pressure, because if I push too much, I'll get a really tiny, skinny top. So I'm going to do it again. Push in. And then lean over. Pull up. Now if you notice your hand is sticking on the inside, I'm going to stop because my hand is sticking on the inside. I'm going to put a little bit more water on my hand, and that's going to get the inside wet again. And I'm going to pull where I left off, pull up again. Now you might be noticing that it's getting wider, right? And you'll notice too that it's narrow at the base than it is at the top. So now what I've got to do is something called collaring. I've got to pull it in, make it a little less wide. So I'm going to get some water on my hands. I'm going to make sure there's water on the project. And then I'm going to grab the project so that I'm touching this with this part of my hand, this part of my hand, and this part of my hand on both sides. And I'm going to start to pull inward or you're gonna basically pull your hands together and lift upward. If your hand is wet, what it's gonna do is it's gonna make that hole smaller. So now if I put my sponge over, you'll see the hole is smaller. And I can do this from as far down as I need to. This is also compressing the clay. So it's actually giving you more clay to work with at the top here. So if you need to pull it taller, you can keep going. So I'm going to put my hand on the inside. Maybe I want to switch and I don't want to use the sponge. And I'm going to pull up. So it's getting nice and tall. I can keep going. I have a tendency to block the camera, don't I? My hands are moving together. If you feel uneasy at any time, you can kind of stop. You can reassess. You can add more water if you need it. You can keep going. To say that I've done this a lot of times. I know what I'm doing. It looks easy. It's not an easy thing to do. Be patient with yourself. You'll get better as you continue to work. You'll get really good with more practice, all right? This takes lots and lots and lots of practice. So always remember that your first one might be not so great, and that's okay. You'll get better as you go. When I'm done pulling my form, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dry out the inside and pull it up off of the wheel back. I'm going to take one more pull. Maybe I can get out of the way while I'm doing it this time. And if you want to use the sponge, you're welcome to it. I actually prefer to use the sponge, but I feel like it's easier for you to see if I pull with my fingers. Now, once I have a cylinder, I'm going to go ahead and clean the slip out of the inside. So I'm going to take my sponge and go on the inside, clean it off. You're probably not going to get a cylinder this big. It does depend on how much clay you have. I think I have around 1.5 pounds of clay. I didn't measure it. And then I like to clean up the slip around the project too, tidy it up. I even like to use my rib and hold it at an angle to scrape off any excess slip on the outside. There's all different kinds of ribs too, and all those different kinds of ribs will give you a lot of different effects with your clay. Give you different shapes too. Okay, so now that I have cleaned up the outside and gotten most of the slip off, now I'm going to go ahead and trim the bottom a little bit. So if you forget to wrap yours and it ends up drying out, you're going to be thankful that you did this next step. This next step, you're going to take the J tool. You're going to actually point the J tool towards your project, so that angle towards your project. You're going to go at an angle, so don't go directly into your project. Go at an angle. There's a bevel on the J tool. Follow that bevel. Hold it nice and still. And trim the bottom. Go all the way down till you feel the wheel back. Then you can take your needle tool touch that black line that you just made because you just touched the back. If you turn off your wheel, you should be able to cut right through and pull this long snake off of it. Okay, so now we have a nice clean foot. We also have a nice tall cylinder. You can reshape it and all that, do all kinds of fancy shapes before you take it off of the wheel. But now I'm going to take it off the wheel. We'll save talking about shaping it for another day. I am going to go ahead and use a tool to cut it off, and I'm going to wipe my hands off first. You'll notice I'm using my water here. I just need to get the slip off. I'm going to turn off my wheel so I don't accidentally step on my pedal or my friends step on my pedal while I'm trying to move my project. I'm going to grab one of these nice little wooden boards and put it nearby. I actually don't want it there just yet. And then hanging up on the wall near each of the wheels are different cutters. This one is a nylon cutter. I like the nylon cutters, but there's also wire ones too. You're going to wrap them around your fingers like you're flossing. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Wrap it around your fingers. You're going to use your thumb to push down on the nylon string, and you're going to pull it towards you quickly, pushing against the bat. You can see the line my finger made as it dragged across. Hang this bad boy back up after you clean them off. And then this part is the tricky part. It's moving your project. You may not be very good at it. That's okay. What you can do is you can use pot lifts. I do have pot lifts in the wheel throwing cabinet. They're always messy. Please, please, please wipe them down before you put them away. You use the pot lift by scooting it under, lifting, and then placing it and removing. You can also use your fingers. For your fingers, you grab the bottom as far down as you can. Should have done this explanation before cutting it. And then you move it over. If it's a little uneven, that shape, you can kind of bounce it around a little bit until it rests in the right position. You can also let it dry a little bit more and just kind of pick it up and move it around on there, and it'll go back to what it was before, that round shape. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get like a floppy side on there. But once you have that, you can then put this over on one of the racks. You're going to put your name first. Put a piece of tape, grab some green tape, put some tape on it. You're going to put it over on your shelf. It's going to dry a little bit. And then you're going to want to move it into your cabinet before it dries out completely. Alrighty? I think that's everything. The next step is you can actually start throwing immediately afterward on top of this little lump here. It actually helps for centering. The next video is going to be cleaning all this mess up. So I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing your project.